Welcome to the Jordan and Vanessa show. I'm Vanessa,
Now I'm Jordan.
and today's episode is actually about a realization I had while cleaning the garage the other day, which is the hardest part is actually just convincing yourself that it's easy.
Totally. Yeah, I think in today's society, there's kind of a narrative around things being hard or things being difficult
Right.
because we erect statues and give accolades and credit
And praise.
and praise to people that do quote unquote hard things.
Right. Yeah, you have a network marketing background, and I feel like in that whole network marketing world, it's very much that energy where it's like the more that you suffer, the more you grind, the more valiant you are.
Yeah, and people really root for the underdog.
Right.
It's like that person doesn't have a chance in hell of succeeding. Oh, wait, they did it. Ah! You know what I mean?
I too can suffer and get there.
Rudy.
Yeah.
And we do get inspired, and it does feel cool, and it is fun to see someone rise to a level that was beyond what they originally had anticipated, right?
Right.
So the conversation we've been having lately is it actually hard, or was it just a label that we placed on something to maybe magnify it in our mind so that whenever we succeed, it gets more praise and accolades?
Right.
So how often are we telling a story of hard so that when we win, it's more of a win, or it's a bigger win, or it's a more robust example of success? It's kind of like whenever our kids come to us and say, look what I did, when it comes to maybe putting up a box back in the toy box. It's like, that's a really heavy box. I was able to lift it and put it back in.
Right. Yeah, or making a sandwich. Like they're getting the utensils out of the drawers, and they're getting the bread, and they're getting the peanut butter and the jelly and putting it together. And it's like, wow, you can do that. That's amazing. You're only 5 years old.
Yeah.
So from a young age, you're kind of teaching them that doing hard things brings them praise.
Yeah, and the reality of the universe is that when we overcome obstacles and we push through challenges and we do hard things, that is where progress is made.
Right.
So that is a really good thing. Like, I don't want to ditch the narrative of do hard things. Like, one of my favorite quotes from Les Brown is, if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. If you do what is easy, your life will be hard.
Right.
Like, in some respects, you want to push yourself and make progress. But there's a fine line between labeling something as hard and it actually being hard.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
So how often are we engaging in the idea of hard to basically validate the idea, or to further validate whenever we succeed?
Yeah, definitely. And by labeling something as hard, we're placing an expectation on that thing to be hard.
Correct.
So we're really calling forth manifestational evidence of hardness on our path to where we're trying to get to.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. And I think that's the thing. Like, there are some things that you don't want to label as hard
Right.
in your world. Like, you don't want to wake up to 100 hard things every day.
Yeah, it's kind of like giving birth. Like, do you want to label the birth of your child as a very hard, excruciating experience? I don't. I don't want a labor that's really hard and excruciating. Like, I did a lot of pre-paving before I gave birth to our kids, and I feel like they really were special experiences whenever we were giving birth to them, because I did that pre-paving. And I focused on how special those moments were going to be. And I focused on wanting to feel like high emotions on the emotional guidance scale, like wanting to feel ecstasy, and not focusing on the hardness and the difficulty and those lower emotions that were going to bring me a lot of pain.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. So how often are we basically focused in the pain,
right,
versus focused in the pleasure, when you actually do have a choice in the matter? I actually saw that with you giving birth to our 3 children. You were actually able to find pleasure and create a memorable, positive experience from the birth of our children.
Completely naturally, without drugs, without epidurals, without any of those things.
Yeah, totally. It was actually really magical to see you do that. And it's a really great example because how often are we doing that where we have a choice,
Right.
but we choose the pain side because that's what's more validated by society.
Right.
So like you see people get on stage and they tell their stories.
Yep.
What people love to see is all the hardship and all the things that they had to overcome and all the challenges and all the limitations.
The
and all
hero's journey.
the hero's journey. So like the limitation that they had to overcome, the hardship, the difficulty, the conflict they had to push through to be able to make it to the other side. Like that's what makes a good movie, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you're seeing people do things, they're just engaging that energy way more than ease and flow. But in reality, don't we want more ease and flow?
Yeah, could we do without the really sad parts in the Disney movies? Like the really scary, sad parts that our son hates. He can't even watch. He tells us to turn off the Disney movies. Like in Cinderella, whenever like does the mom and the dad have to die?
Yeah. And do you really have to milk it? No.
Yeah, and do you really have to make it super scary and like evil stepmother and all of these things?
Yeah. Well, and the reality is that is what makes a good movie.
Yeah.
You want these emotional roller coasters in a movie, in a 90-minute production that's designed to make you feel something.
Right.
Those are the levers
right.
of basically making people feel emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
That is the intention with movies.
Totally.
You want to make the audience feel things.
Yeah. We're going to drive you down here and have you feel the anxiety and the stress for the hero in the hero's journey. And we're going to really
taking you on this emotional roller coaster.
We're going to make you see how not only do they deserve the success that they're going to have at the end, but how bad they had it in the beginning so that you can really see the move from Cinderella, for example, like wicked stepmother mopping the floor, injustice.
Yeah.
She's so sweet and beautiful and such a wonderful singer and friends with all the creatures.
All the forest animals.
She can somehow communicate with these animals.
Yeah.
She's so wonderful. And she's literally locked in a tower doing the bidding of her evil stepmother and stepsisters.
But she still finds joy.
But she still finds joy within it. Oh, Cinderella, you deserve to be at the top of whatever pyramid you would climb. And then at the end, a dream is a wish your heart makes. And then she's riding in the carriage with the prince. It's like, it's like she went all the way from way down there to way up there.
Yeah, so we're like, the underdog, go Cinderella.
Right, but if you ask most people, when it comes to your money, when it comes to your relationships that are in your life, when it comes to your career, work environment, when it comes to your physical body, do you want ease and flow as you progress toward more abundance in your life, to a healthier physical body, to better relationships, to a more fulfilling career work environment? Or do you want it to be this tumultuous, conflict-ridden journey of, ick?
Yeah, I definitely would prefer the first scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. We want ease and flow.
Yeah, but it's so easy to just have those labels of hard placed on your life and have the expectation that things are meant to be hard or they're supposed to be hard in order for any of it to mean anything.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. Like you see this a lot in entrepreneurship where people are trying to set the expectation of hard in advance, maybe partially so you know what to expect.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, think about that real quick.
Right.
I want you to know what to expect. What if you have a choice in what to expect? Then do you want to adopt the conflict-ridden hardship route, or do you want to adopt the ease and flow route?
Right.
Are there people that have experienced an entrepreneurial journey that had a tremendous amount of ease and flow in it?
Right.
And are there people that have experienced an entrepreneurial journey that had a tremendous amount of conflict and difficulty? Absolutely. There's stories of both.
Oh, yeah.
So since you have stories of both, then that means you have a choice.
And I believe we came here for the ease and flow. We came to have fun. We came to experience ourselves in these physical bodies and have these really amazing, satiating life experiences. We didn't come here for the struggle.
Totally.
It's just a story that we've bought into over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you look at the basis of life is freedom, the purpose of life is joy, and the result of life is expansion.
Mm-hmm.
The contrast is in there, and
Right.
it allows for the expansion. It ultimately allows you experiences that you can joyfully line up with, and ultimately you can step your way into freedom. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a requirement to come here and experience all the struggle and all the hardship and all the difficulty all along the way, and to basically focus on it in a way that essentially puts you in this negative emotional state perpetually.
Right.
You didn't come here to be in a perpetually negative emotional state as you pursued success in all these arenas that we just discussed.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that Abraham Hicks talks about a lot that makes the audience laugh is like for a lot of you, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until you croak to remember that you came here for it to be a joyous experience.
Yeah.
But you're so stuck in all of the resistance and you can't break free of it that unfortunately a lot of people have to croak in order to see the full perspective of how things are actually working here.
And Vanessa and I don't want you guys to have to croak to start to experience more ease and flow.
That's why we choose fun. I feel like we've done a really great job at finding the fun in our relationship, in our life, in our business, in everything that we do. We've really put fun at the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can honestly say that things didn't feel hard. They felt like the exact next right thing for us.
Yeah, totally.
And we've always bought into the dialogue that everything always works out for us perfectly.
Yeah.
And I believe that things really have played out that way in our life.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's kind of like the Mary Poppins quote.
Mm-hmm.
In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun, you know? And I feel like we've done a really good job of finding that fun along the way. A really good example is I remember whenever we made our first $1 million in business, like the ticker went over to 7 figures. We passed it effortlessly. Like I actually had to look in rears to find out when it actually happened because it was just like the next logical step. It's like, of course, we have made $1 million. Like we've been there in our mind and in our vibration for a long time.
Right. That was like an expectation at that point.
Totally. So like whenever you go over that mark and you're there and you're actually in vibrational harmony with it, it's not this big mind-blowing emotion that you might perceive it to be 5 years before, 10 years before you start your journey toward whatever it is that you want to experience. Because by the time you get there, it's just the next right thing, the next logical thing that would happen.
And I feel like we trained ourselves into that very early on. Like even when we were completely broke, I remember taking a screenshot one day of our bank accounts. We had like, 34 cents in our account.
It was pretty rough. I forget the exact numbers, but we have a screenshot of it.
You heard the screenshot sound and you asked me, you were like, did you just take a screenshot? And I said, this is going to be funny one day.
Yeah.
And now like, here we are. It's funny.
Yeah. Maybe that's the day it became funny when we went over $1 million in earnings in our business. It was like, haha, today's the day. That's funny. It's like,
but I feel like we did a really great job of that. And even when we didn't have any money, we weren't feeling sorry for ourselves that we couldn't go out on luxurious dates. Like we would go to parks and we would bring like a deck of cards and we would play cribbage and we would go to Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday was legit.
It was.
We would like get a $5 taco plate.
And split it. We wouldn't even get our own $5 taco plate.
No.
But that was the fun in it. Being savvy with our money was the fun of it.
Yeah, we
we
found the fun in frugality at that time. And so that's a perfect example of something can be excruciatingly painful depending on how you decide to perceive it.
Right.
Or you can find the fun in it. And we found fun in frugality in the beginning.
Yeah, so it wasn't like, oh, we're broke. In 5 years when we're doing really well or when we expect to be doing really well, then we can start having fun. Then we can start spending money. Then we can start doing all of these things. We detached the the expectation that you can only have fun whenever you make it to whatever B is. Like, I'm at A, when I get to B, then I'll be happy or I'll be able to enjoy myself. We never put joy outside of our current moment. I feel like we were always really good at finding the fun and focusing on the fun in whatever situation we've been in. So we've been doing this for a long time now.
Yeah, and it was because of our intention to do so. I mean, we definitely had our days where it was difficult, you know.
Of course.
But at the end of the day, when you're focused and you have the intention to find the fun and begin to disengage that idea of hardship and really find the fun in there, then you're there 80, 90% of the time versus 100% of the time being below the green line. For the most part, you can stay there.
Right.
And I definitely remember those times. I remember distinctly when the frugality fun started to meet with what I would call extreme abundance on the income side.
Right.
And what started to happen is we started to make several times more money as a multiple as our expenses, because we had found so much fun in frugality for so long that once we actually got to the point that we were making several times that, we basically still found the fun in frugality. So we held on to the fun of the frugality at the same time.
We were accumulating all of this money.
Yeah, and that's what happened is once we were making several times more, we were still finding fun in frugality, but now we're finding fun in watching the abundance roll in. And it turned out that there was a huge gap between what we had coming in versus what we had going out.
Yeah.
And that's when accumulation happened. And we actually had to adjust to accumulation and get into what we called an accumulation consciousness at the time. You remember when we basically were just like, what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what? This is crazy how rapidly this is piling up. And both of us decided to adopt the idea of an accumulation consciousness where we gave ourselves permission to allow this money to start to pile up.
And enjoy spending some of it.
Totally.
Because there was like this shift from being really thrifty and buying like the great value chili, which I don't recommend for anybody.
There are just some things that you don't go there, man. Like I realized that. Like you got to get the Hormel or the Wolf brand. Like you don't go great value on the chili.
So then once we started shifting into this accumulation consciousness, we started making more decisions that felt good to us.
Right.
So it wasn't just, oh, we need to save money. We need to stash like squirrels. It was more like, this purchase feels good to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make it. Like, I don't want our money to just sit here like a pile of manure. I want to actually like spread it around and circulate it. And I feel like there's a healthy flow to that, to spending money and then allowing more to come in. So trusting that the universe is going to give you more, not that you just have to save every single penny or pinch every single penny, but knowing that there's more where that came from.
100%. I feel like that was a really fun place to be.
Yeah.
Where we gave ourselves permission to accumulate, but at the same time, we disengaged from the fear that it wouldn't keep flowing. I actually have a funny story that I remember from this time where this started to happen. And one of the pieces of stinking thinking that I had was actually uncovered by this. And I remember one day I was talking about the amount of money that was going to flow into the accounts.
Yeah.
And I said, if we get paid, then there would be this much money come in. And I remember you distinctly asking me, why do you say that? I was like, what? You were like, if
we get paid.
If we get paid. Like, what do you mean by that? I'm
We've
like, well,
always gotten paid.
Yeah, you were like, we've always gotten paid. People have always made good on our contracts. There hasn't been one instance of someone not making good on the contract. So why do you say that? You know? I was like, huh. And there was just this element of fear sort of attached to the income, almost like I don't want to expect all the money to come because then, you know what I mean? I might be setting myself up for whatever.
Yeah.
And in this particular instance, I reached back into my childhood where there were a couple of times where essentially a promise was made but not kept on the financial side.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily have to reach back and find that, but in this particular instance, I was like, why do I say that? And it kind of came clear to me as like, well, there was this instance whenever I was a little kid of somebody basically making a deal with me and saying, I'll pay you this much. So I'll tell you the exact story. I was a kid, and basically we would have parties at our house whenever we were younger, and people smoked cigarettes back then more aggressively than maybe they do now, or maybe they still do, or it was like,
I don't think they had the verbiage "cigarettes kill" on the boxes.
Yeah,
whenever
it is what it is. But back then, it was like musicians and stuff that would get together, so there's a lot of cigarettes.
Yeah,
but people would just flick their cigarettes wherever they were smoking them, and there might be a couple hundred people or whatever at this party. So I remember my mom said, "Hey, every cigarette butt that you find and put in this 5-gallon bucket, I'll give you a dime," or whatever it was. And my mom hadn't done the math in her head whenever she gave me this task, And I was like, sweet. So I go outside, and I've always been kind of money motivated.
Yeah.
So I go outside, and I fill like half of a 5-gallon bucket full of cigarette butts, which I don't know if you know how many cigarette butts that is, but it's a lot. Like you would have had to like weigh the cigarette butts and do a calculation to even, you wouldn't have been able to count them. It was like not hundreds, it was probably thousands. Like,
oh my goodness.
It's a lot of cigarette butts.
A lot of dimes.
Yeah, a lot of dimes. And my mom was just like, whoa, like that's a lot. Like I wasn't like expecting
that many.
So she was just kind of like, I'll give you $10 for it, whatever it was. I'll give you X amount of dollars. So there was just this kind of thing of, well, somebody can tell you they're going to do something and like not fulfill on it the way that they agreed to in the beginning. And I think when we're kids, we all have these experiences where people are basically just kind of flippantly going, oh, well, the agreement that I made, like, it's not exactly like that. We're going to do it like this, and they don't think that anything's happening with the kid. But for me, I actually wound up as like a 30-plus-year-old adult saying, if we get paid,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'm
not saying it
your
was
consciousness.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it was directly tied to that experience, but there are probably enough of those types of things that had put a little bit of wobble in my vibration around that.
And then you became aware of them whenever that dialogue came out.
Yeah, and that was one of those pieces of stinking thinking that I intentionally resolved.
Right.
I was like, you know what? You're 100% right. I'm not going to say that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not allowing. Yeah, I didn't. I'm just like, I'm not allowing that if we get paid to creep into our compensation anymore.
And we've always gotten paid.
Now we've always gotten paid. It's actually pretty incredible.
It is
how it works. But
it's amazing.
I think that's an interesting thing, is just moving through life, figuring out how often are we essentially
placing these labels
on things, creating conflict that doesn't need to exist, when ease and flow is
always available.
Is always available.
Yeah, totally. It's always there. So we had a few examples. One of the things that I love how you talk about is the Lego example.
Yeah.
To really portray this. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Oliver has been playing Legos lately, and essentially, when it comes to Legos, if you've ever played them, you know that alignment is key.
Right.
So if you take two Legos that are in perfect alignment, they slide on pretty easily, and it's actually a pretty satisfying experience. It's like, yeah, that felt really good.
Creating.
Yeah. But if you've ever taken two tiny Legos and put them together not quite lined up and tried to put them together, you'll realize it is completely impossible.
It's awful.
It is never gonna happen, man. Those two are never gonna go together. And it's funny watching Oliver have like the frustration around it, because he'll be like, Daddy, can you help me with this one? It might be two weird little pieces. And the key to getting those two weird little pieces together is perfect alignment. If you can get them perfectly aligned, they go easily on. But essentially, the idea is alignment first, then apply the pressure.
Right.
Alignment first, then apply the force, right? But a lot of times in society, it's taught backwards.
Right.
Like, apply force, apply pressure.
Until it works.
Until it works. But in the case of a Lego, the answer is never.
Yeah. If it's out of alignment.
If it's not in alignment, if those two pieces are not in alignment, it will never go together, no matter how hard you push.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in our physical reality, that's the case when it comes to vibration.
Definitely.
And vibrational harmony with an outcome.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't really think about the outcome that they're after. So they're just pushing through life, and then circumstances come into their life, and then they decide to push through the circumstances without any clarity on where it is that they're trying to go. So then you look up decades later and it's like, I've pushed through all of these things, but what have I accomplished?
Right. And actually, you see that a lot of times in these hero's journey type stories that you and I were talking about at the beginning,
right?
Where you see someone get up on stage and now they're talking about their success. But what you see is like this 20 or 30 year backstory of hardship.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Success. Like everything kind of clicks.
Yeah.
And one of the big narratives in society now is, yeah, but you didn't see the 10 years of hardship, the 10 years of struggle, the 20 years, the 30 years. You didn't see all this conflict, all this difficulty, all this stuff that led to that person finally being able to have the success. But often, if you actually look at it and you actually start to talk to the person, you'll ask them like, hey man, like what happened? What clicked?
Yeah.
What finally was sort of the domino that pushed that over?
Right.
And if you get some of these owners of companies and stuff behind closed doors and you ask them these types of questions, they'll tell you there were magic moments associated with these big outcomes.
Right.
It was like there was this moment where this happened. This relationship was formed. I met this person. This piece of supply chain got figured out. Whatever it is. And it's like, boop.
Right.
Like it sort of unlocked the keys to the kingdom, so to speak.
Totally.
And that actually happens a lot where I think people have all this struggle for a really long time, and then they finally get into vibrational harmony with what it is they're after, maybe get clarity on it, get vibrational harmony with it, and then all of a sudden ease and flow goes boom, and in a period of 6, 12, 18 months, there's this meteoric rise to success.
Right.
Full of ease and flow.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, do we have to attach the 20 or 30 years of hardship and conflict to that 18-month, 24-month, 36-month meteoric rise? Or could we just say, hey, they were finally in alignment with it?
Right.
Or that was the divine timing. That was when everything was perfectly aligned for it to happen.
Right. Yeah, I feel like from the time that we actually focused on the flow and the fun, that things really took off for us. So when we first got together, the first business that we were working on together, it felt like there was a lot of friction, and we definitely placed the label of hardship on it, and that it was going to be a difficult, arduous process. It was going to take a lot of time to grow and things like that. And from the moment that we let that go and we shifted to the business that was our brainchild and we went that direction, it just felt like God winks were everywhere. We were getting divine guidance. Mm-hmm. We felt like we were in the flow of the exact right thing at the exact right time. The exact right people would come into our lives.
Right.
So, for example, we had different projects that were brought to us, and I remember having these business meetings with these business owners, and in the meeting you would say, oh yeah, we can do that. And then I remember leaving the business meetings and looking at you and saying, we don't know how to do that. And you said, not yet, but we will. And so we would learn it, and it was fun. It was fun learning.
Yeah.
And our whole thing along the way is we get paid to learn.
Yeah.
And so we were getting paid to learn these really powerful, some people would say difficult things.
Right.
But it was fun to us because we were getting paid to learn these things.
Yeah.
And then that skill that we had learned, that we had really sharpened, all of a sudden another business owner would come in and say that they needed that exact skill that we had just learned.
Totally.
And they're like, do you know how to create a WooCommerce store? It's like, yes, we do. We just created a multi-million-dollar e-commerce store.
Yeah. It was crazy how the dominoes would like line up and then tip themselves. And it
then
would
opportunity would present itself. We could take advantage of said opportunity and
totally.
move forward and then sharpen our skills even more and then be even more prepared for the next opportunity.
Totally. It was like we were presented the exact right skill that was
Right.
going to set us up for the exact right domino stream that was already set up in
Yeah.
advance. And we would go capture that skill, acquire it, and then all of a sudden it would be like, oh man, this is why we needed that skill.
Totally.
And ultimately we built what I would call a skill stack,
Yeah.
where now we had this Batman tool belt, so to speak, of all these different skills that could be combined to create one really badass, powerful output.
Yeah.
So what's really cool is you look back and you said it so eloquently how we were finding the fun in basically those skill deficiencies at the time.
Yeah.
Like if you were to really talk about what it was like, I don't know how to do that, but we're going to figure out how to do it. And we would enjoy learning how to do it because it was attached to opportunity. And it was just
Right.
uncanny how often we would resolve a skill deficiency within ourselves, and then this massive door would open up over here that required that exact skill.
Right. And I feel like we removed the label. You're so good at this, like moving up learning curves so incredibly fast. So you removed early on, I feel like, the label of this is going to be difficult. This is going to be hard. This is going to take a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember going to Australia. We had a very long flight over there. It was like, wasn't it 14 hours
Yeah.
or something crazy like
Mhm.
that? So we're on this flight for 14 hours. And this new skill came into our lives, this new skill deficiency we became aware of, which was Google AdWords.
Yep.
And so we needed to learn Google marketing for one of the companies that we were working with. And of course, the same thing happened where Jordan was like, yes, we can definitely do that. And we leave the meeting and I'm like, how are we going to do that? And you say, don't worry about it. It's going to happen. So we're on this flight to Australia. We have 14 hours to do whatever we want. We're just sitting there. You can't go many places on a plane flight. So Jordan has the intention to learn Google AdWords. So he had already downloaded this course
Mhm.
about Google marketing. And as we're sitting there for nearly 14 hours straight, I'd say you watched that whole course. It was over 10 hours? You
Yeah.
watched the entire course
Yeah.
on this flight.
Yeah.
So by the time we made it to Sydney, Australia, you basically were like the Matrix. You
Yeah.
had downloaded the entire like Google ads, like PPCs. You understood how all marketing worked.
Yeah.
So we got there and you were like, all right, we're good to go.
Yeah. And it sounds kind of crazy, like, but things like that really would happen. And a lot of times it was because the pumps were already primed,
Right.
so to speak. Like I understood the terms, I understood what stuff meant, but there was like a level of detail
Yeah.
that essentially would make you more knowledgeable on the subject than 95% of the planet.
Right.
So I think one thing that I found that's really interesting these days, because of the connectivity of the world and the connectivity of minds through the internet,
Yeah.
you can, on a narrow subject, become more advanced than 95 out of 100 people in the world just by diving a little bit deeper than most everybody knows.
Definitely.
I literally did that with that intention of like, I need to dive a little bit deeper so that at least I understand this at a level beyond what this person currently knows.
And when you're in flow, the exact right information presents itself to you.
Totally. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to be able to offer real value. I didn't want to be
Right.
able to just speak to it. I wanted to be able to actually do it, right?
Right.
At a level beyond what they could actually do it and essentially earn,
Yeah.
the compensation that would come as a result. And
Definitely.
there were a whole bunch of different things that we did that ultimately resulted in our business being as successful as it has been.
Right.
And I'm so grateful for all of those things. Like I look back and I look at some of the early clients that we had
Mhm.
that were basically having us solve little problems like they weren't little problems, but in scope and scale.
Right.
Right. So
yeah, like in the beginning, we started with just like little website edits, like, oh, I don't really like this verbiage. Can we change this verbiage?
Right.
So it was like very
we'll
small
figure out how
tasks.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, oh, we could build a better website than this.
Yeah.
You know, but it would be a very small contract. But
Right.
a lot of what we've done now, we've built WordPress installations that have done tens of millions of dollars through them multiple times.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like multiple different companies, multiple different genres, multiple different types of businesses. But it ultimately, at some level, is tied back to those initial skill capturing endeavors
Right.
of the initial business.
And it's almost like all of those skills, all of the things that brought us to who we are now, those were all like the Legos that were all lining up. And it's not that we are always in flow and everything is always like falling into perfect place on the Legos. Sometimes a Lego comes and it won't fit, but because we're usually in alignment, that Lego really sticks out.
Yeah.
And we can be aware of it and choose to move forward differently. You know what I mean?
You totally nailed it. So like essentially, once you start to adopt this paradigm,
right.
then you start to see flow and friction like
I love that.
guide markers on a trail.
Right.
So like essentially you go, how am I going to go about doing this?
Yeah.
You know? And if you can get into ease and flow and start to get into the vibrational energy of that, then when you get to a trail, one path goes that way and one path goes that way, you can start to see flow
right.
or friction. So
Yeah.
whenever you encounter friction, it's like, man, this path is like really like bouncing back at me. Like I'm pushing on it, but it's like a rubber band throwing me back. You know, it's like
this is not the fun.
This is not the fun. This is the friction. These pathways are not good. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you find something that's like, ooh, that feels nice. This is
Right.
ease and flow. This just worked.
Yeah.
This system just worked.
This feels right.
This feels right. And so you literally start to go, I'm not going down the friction path. I'm going down the flow path. And what's interesting is this really circulates what we've been talking about here. Whereas if you're focused in the hard and the difficulty, when you encounter the friction, then there's this narrative of push through the friction, just make it happen, knock over the trees that are in your path, you know, like just keep smashing up against that brick wall until you break
to your
through.
emotions.
Don't listen to your emotional
Just-
guidance system. Don't seek flow. Just beat your way through this problem.
Yeah.
And it's like so literally just engaging in the narrative of hard, difficult as the path forward.
I see this all the time with retirees. Like, how many people do you see in the workforce that are just looking to the future to when they retire?
Yeah.
So it's like at 67 and a quarter, when I can retire, that's when I'm going to have fun. But for now, I'm just going to stomp through all of these things that I don't actually want to do.
Yeah.
And they haven't even thought to try to have fun along the way to retirement.
Yeah.
They think all the fun is in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like, no, let's focus on having the fun now, and then you'll be really versed in having the fun in the future too.
Totally. Yeah. And it's interesting because you think about the number of businesses that make it or the number of businesses that fail.
Mm-hmm.
You almost wonder how many of them fail because of the narrative.
Right?
How many of them fail because
That's the expectation.
they think that friction and difficulty and challenge and conflict are the path?
Right.
This is kind of an interesting idea because whenever we first started our business,
Yeah.
what you wanted more than anything at the time was a house. We had been bouncing living situation to living situation, and you wanted to be able to set roots. You know, I don't want to rent anymore. I want to have a house, and we want to have a family, and we want to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know what banks love?
Security.
Security. You know what security looks like in a business? Profit. And if you go to a business or if you go to a bank and you say, look at all this money that came in, and they say, okay, well, how much of it did you spend operating the business? And you say, all of it. Then they say, Okay, that's $0. What else have you got?
Do
Right?
you know what the qualifying mortgage on $0 is?
Yeah. Do you know what you're qualified
Zip.
for right now,
Nothing.
sir? 0. And on top of that, whenever we first started making money and having money come into the business, I thought that we would just qualify. They would see the money coming in, like you see the money coming into my bank account. And they're like, no. They're like, that money doesn't count for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you incorporated this business on this date. In 2 years, you'll be able to give us the tax filings on those businesses, and then we'll count that income. In the meantime, what else have you got?
Yeah.
Right? So the cool thing is I had those conversations early on, so I knew that they were going to want to see real profit inside the business. So whenever I started our business, my focus was profit. I want to have profit inside of this business because when Vanessa and I go to sit down with the bank, I want them to see qualifying income that would give her what she wants, which is a mortgage on a home, right? So from the time we incorporated that business, we were profitable.
Yep.
And our very first year in business, we showed well over 6 figures in profit.
Yeah.
The next year in business, we showed multiple 6 figures in profit. Not money in the door, profit. So whenever we went and sat down with the mortgage company, once you found the house that you wanted, and they went to qualify our income, they looked at our tax returns, and I paid tax on all that money. It was real profit. And they were like, wow, you guys are highly qualified. What are your expenses now? We were like, $42. We live under a bridge, you know?
And use coupons.
And use coupons everywhere. They're like, sir, like the amount of money that you spend versus the amount of money that you make, and
Do you
the
live in
profit.
America?
Yeah, like what's going on here? It was like I just wanted to be really sure, you know. And anyway, it was just an interesting scenario, but like I didn't have room for this angst and conflict and all of that based on the objective at hand.
Yeah.
The objective at hand was, how do I show profit in a business that's enough to qualify to buy my wife a house?
So that was the focus.
So that was the focus. So it was like that's the objective. So I'm looking for ease and flow. I'm looking for opportunity. I'm looking for ways that we can have tons of money come into the bank account and not a whole lot go out. And I knew in advance what I was trying to do. And I was looking for ease and flow. I wasn't looking for difficulty, hard. What's the common narrative in business? Oh, you won't even be profitable for 5 years if you ever get profitable.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Make it.
If you ever get profitable, it's going to take you a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's very, very common for people to think. So I almost wonder how many businesses fail or go out of business because they came into it with an idea, with a narrative, with a label that this is what that's going to look like. And they came in with that expectation.
And they're operating below the green line.
Yeah, they're operating below the green line because that's not in harmony
Right.
with profit in a business,
or
right?
with your desire.
Or with
of
your
what
desire.
you see for the business. Hopefully. I hope you don't start a business thinking that it's not going to make it.
Yeah, totally. But there are these narratives. So
Yeah.
that's the big point that we're trying to make is basically how often is something labeled a certain way?
Right.
And then that's where focus is placed, and where focus goes, energy flows, and that's what you're vibrationally in harmony with. So essentially, people get into vibrational harmony with conflict, difficulty, unprofitable businesses for years, pushing against friction till you maybe one day will make it. And honestly, there really is a better way. And I think you actually have a process for this. You know, we like to talk about the how-to. So maybe we could talk a little bit about, okay, you've made the point of, you know, ease and flow, find the fun. Like how
ditch
exactly,
ditch
the labels, how exactly would one go about executing this idea in their life?
So we wanted to share 3 different points about the how-to. So bridging the woo-woo with the how-to. Here's the how-to. And number 1 was beginning to observe when these labels arise, choosing to disengage from those labels. That was number 1. Number 2 is finding the fun So like you said with the Mary Poppins lyric, what was it? In
every job that must be done, there is an element of fun.
So it really is bringing that into the task at hand. I love watching the kids clean up the bonus room because they really do turn everything they do into a game.
Yeah.
So it's not like for us, we're going through the motions of cleaning up the bonus room where the intention is to have a clean room. But for them, the intention is to have fun on the way to having a clean room.
Yeah.
And they do a really great job. It might take 5 times longer, but in the end, the same objective is complete, and they had a really fun time on the way to completing the objective.
Yeah, totally.
So that's number 2, finding the fun. So find it, whatever you're doing right now, if you can find a way to focus on fun, and even just asking the universe, how can I make this fun?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there are processes you can do, like the Swiss cheese process. I love doing that one. So for the Swiss cheese process, you draw circles on a sheet of paper and then you write all of the things that you know that need to be done.
Right.
And then once you have your brain dump on paper, you have all of the things out of your brain. Now you can read over all of those things you've written in all of the circles and focus on the thing that feels the most fun right now.
I love that process.
So then you start on that task, you complete that task that feels most fun, and then you have momentum around the fun and around accomplishing something. So then from there you can read over all of the other things you have on in your circles on your sheet of paper, and then focus on the next thing that feels the most fun. And then as you complete these different things, you have this momentum of fun.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that process is it's uncanny the number of times that you do the fun things and then all the unfun things on the list just disappear.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden they're not even required anymore.
Definitely.
Really cool.
It was either covered by another task that you already did, or somebody else did it.
Yeah.
Like for example, say on my Swiss cheese process, one of the circles is unloading the dishwasher. It's incredible how say you're already in the momentum of the fun. I had other things on my list. I completed, say, going through all the papers on the desk. And then by the time I go to the dishwasher, my husband has already unloaded the dishes.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah, so that's just a simple example of that. So really, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
It's just asking yourself, how can I make this fun?
Yeah,
totally. And then feeling inspired.
Yeah, so that's number 3.
Right, that's number 3, is engaging the fun with inspired action.
Yep. Yeah. So just to recap, number 1, you're going to begin to just observe the labels that you're placing on an experience. And whenever you find something being full of friction, difficulty, not funness, you know what I mean? Beginning to just ask yourself, like, is this just a label that I'm placing on this? Is there an opportunity for fun within this? And essentially just begin to disassociate from the idea of difficulty and challenge and conflict within it.
Stop seeking
stop seeking the friction, basically. And whenever you find it and you just see it naturally arise within you, start to just disengage from it and be like, you know what? That's not really serving me. I'm not looking for friction. I'm looking for fun.
Yeah.
Then that moves to number 2. Is there any element of this that could be fun? Maybe the Swiss cheese process would be a great avenue to go, where you do the circles, you find the most fun thing to do now, what feels the most fun to you now, and you begin to engage that, start to build momentum in the fun. And then number 3, once you've found some fun, now you're taking inspired action toward that fun, and you're consistently sort of repeating that process where it's like, I found some fun, I'm building some momentum, I'm taking inspired action towards it. Another thing may arise within you that's conflict. Oh, it can't be that easy. It's not that easy. You know, and it comes back up again. You just go, observe. That's not very fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the fun. I'm going to engage it. I'm going to take inspired action toward the fun side of this, and I'm going to keep doing that. And if you can continually rinse and repeat that process, you find yourself dominantly engaged in fun activities around things that maybe you didn't previously find any fun in.
Right. And I feel like the more that you're engaged in the fun, the easier it is to identify whenever the friction does come up.
Totally.
It's like, this is temporary.
Oh,
this
absolutely.
isn't what I'm choosing. This is just a point of friction. So
Yeah.
how can I get around this?
Yeah.
How do I enter the flow?
Yeah. If you've been sitting there like petting a felt like piece of fabric and you're just like, oh, this is so nice. This is so nice. This is so nice. And then all of a sudden it gets replaced with like a piece of low grit sandpaper. It's like, oh no! You know, it's like all of a sudden, like the relativity between the one thing and the other thing is like so like jarring that you're just like, oh no, it's sandpaper. That's friction. That's not how I roll at all. I don't roll like that at all. I'm back to ease and flow. And then you like find the felt again and just
oh,
start petting
that's
that.
better.
You know, like stroke the furry wall. kind of thing. Yeah.
So the whole idea, like the hardest part of it all is just convincing yourself that it's easy. You can even do practice in your daily life. Like, for example, I had a dentist appointment a few months ago, and sometimes I just like to practice these things and see what happens, like in my reality, like what kind of manifestations occur due to me like intentionally doing something. So before my dentist appointment, and I've never really particularly loved the dentist. It's just something that I feel like I really want to do to keep my dental hygiene good.
You do have great teeth. I mean, you have a great smile.
I put a lot of work into it.
You have $1 million like Julia Roberts smile for real.
Oh my goodness.
It's so good.
That's not the story. So beforehand, I was just putting some energy into the future. I was thinking, how could I make this dentist appointment fun? And so I started thinking about it, like, and just pondering and just putting that out to the universe. How could I make this dentist appointment fun? And I was focused on that. I wasn't focused on, oh, this is going to take time out of my day. It's not really fun sitting there and having them clean my teeth. I didn't go into that energy. I went into the fun. Mm-hmm. And so I was focused on that. And then I went to the dentist. They called me back, and I had this dental hygienist that I'd never seen before. And she was so funny.
Right.
I just laughed the entire time she was cleaning my teeth.
Yeah.
And then the doctor wasn't even available that day. So I got to go home early before the doctor even like came into the room. It was just like so flow and easy and fun.
Yeah.
I left the dentist that day thinking that was fun.
Yeah. Totally.
Like something that you wouldn't even think could be fun.
Yeah.
Was fun.
Well, and I love this example because one thing that's great to do is practice on things in your life already that maybe you already find joy and fun in. So, for example, you and I talk about me going fishing, right? Yeah. And I, the other day, was describing the process of what it takes for me to get ready to go fishing with my dad and then actually go through the entire process. So I got to get my gear ready. I've got to get the stuff that I think is going to catch the fish. I've got to get my fishing poles and my baits. And then once I have all that ready, I've got to get the boat situated. And then once I've got the boat situated, I've got to maneuver this super heavy boat and trailer over to the golf cart that I hooked the boat up to take to the ponds near the house. And I've got to manhandle this thing on there. Then I've got to pull that all the way over to the lake. And then once I get there, I unhook this massive trailer and this super heavy boat, and I manhandle it down into the water, and I get it off the trailer and pull the trailer back out of the water. So if you look at a lot of these things, I was just describing that to you. I was like, do you think that would be like easy for you to like go do?
Sounds really hard.
And it sounds really hard. And it actually technically is.
Yeah. I've seen you do this whole process.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. It makes me tired just watching you do
it's
all
like
these things.
Physically like challenging, difficult. Like a lot of people, depending on your stature and my particular process, it'd be really difficult to do. Yeah. But I find zero hard in that because all I'm focused on is going fishing with my dad.
You're focused on the fun.
I'm focused on the fun. I'm focused on throwing that Cinco rigged worm up by that tree that's at that spot that we've been catching fish and, you know, hooking up on one and pulling it to the boat and taking pictures with my dad. I'm focused on all the fun. So all the hard that would be associated with it essentially just dissipates into the fun, and you don't even notice any of it. So I think you can really practice this process. Start to ask yourself, are there any things in my life right now that I find super fun that would be technically challenging or difficult for another person? And I can promise you that you will find things in your life that you're like, wow, actually, this would be difficult for a lot of people. For example, art. You're really great at art. Our kids are pretty great at art. My sister can paint these beautiful, big, flowing pictures just from concepts she develops in her mind. And she can just like make it all beautiful with all these colors. And like, I don't even know where to start with that. That would be so hard for me. like literally, like I know I'm engaging in the friction and the hard right now, but I'm just saying, like that might be super easy for you or for someone else who's good at art, but for me, it's actually difficult.
The other day, I asked if these art pieces were yours or Oliver's.
If you have to ask. I was like, no, those are way too good to be mine. Those must have been Oliver's.
Are those yours or our 5-year-old's?
Yeah, he's like pretty solid.
But yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Like
so,
there are a lot of things that you already do that would be considered hard to other people, and that's empowering.
Absolutely. And if you really look at what we gravitate to, we gravitate naturally to ease and flow. So when a kid like loves to play baseball and they love to play football, you ever had a kid that just absolutely loved doing something? They'll talk to you about it for hours or days or months or years because they're just so focused within it. And it's technically a challenging endeavor, but they find so much fun in it that they just don't engage with the difficult side. Like if we really just focused in and put our attention on those things where ease and flow was natural for us, can you imagine what the world would look like if billions of people were all kind of doing that?
Just in harmony.
In harmony, naturally acclimating themselves in life toward the things that they enjoy doing.
There'd be a lot more fun, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like a lot of society is stuck doing things they don't like to do day in and day out that they find really difficult to find fun in.
Right.
And a lot of that is choice in life.
Right. It's all perception.
Right.
Like 8 years ago when we started our business, you could ask the question, is putting in 14 to 16-hour days hard? Some people would say, yes, that's extremely hard.
That'd be excruciating based on what I currently do.
Right. They put their own current circumstance into that situation. But for us, it wasn't hard. It was fun.
Yeah.
We were doing what we loved.
It was easy.
And it was easy.
I really do see so much ease and flow in how we developed not only our business, but our entire life. And I would really encourage people to be okay and give yourself permission engaging in those things where there's ease and flow. And you'd be amazed what pathways open up in the universe and the dominoes that are already lined up for you in those spaces.
Right.
Because when you feel ease and flow and fun in something, that generally means that there's a pre-paved path of awesomeness waiting there for you vibrationally. There are already cooperative components assembled for you down that path. So I just encourage people, the more you feel that, give yourself permission to follow those paths.
Definitely. Yeah. And I want to close this with something. It's your spin on something that we've heard a lot in the spiritual world, which is where focus goes, energy flows. But I love your spin that you've put on this recently, the clarity that we'd love to capture there. If you could share that.
Yeah. So for a long time, I've said where focus goes, energy flows, and this year, 2025, I just decided to flip it. I was like, you know what? From now on, where energy flows, my focus goes. Where energy flows, that's where my attention is going to go.
And that's
because
so powerful.
I know that that's where the dominoes are lined up for me. That's where the cooperative components are already assembled. That's where all the ease and flow is. So I'm just going to focus on where energy flows and allow my attention to go there.
That is the leading edge.
Totally.
That's where all the fun is.
I completely agree.
So this was a lot of fun. And with that, we would love to send love and light to all.